Hey everyone, welcome to React Native Made Easy. Today we are going to start a new series of tutorial. Recently I've heard lots of buzzword about GraphQL, so I thought let's give it a try. And when I searched for tutorials related to GraphQL, I didn't find any tutorial for beginners, and the tutorials that are actually said that is for getting started with GraphQL are not as easy to understand as it should be. So I thought I should write my own tutorial so that the the hard path that I have to take to learn it, you don't have to, and you find it easy to understand it. So I have written this tutorial step by step and made it as easy as possible to understand, and every minute detail I have mentioned in this tutorial about GraphQL, and you will find it very easy to get started. So let's see what's there in this tutorial. So first there is a question that what actually is GraphQL. So GraphQL is nothing but just a query language. Like if you have used PHP and MySQL, then SQL is the query language, and it is not dependent on PHP, or it is not dependent on any other thing. It's just a query language. So same way GraphQL is also a query language, and it can be used with myriad of different technologies. We will see later what all technologies it can be used with. And GraphQL is, in simple words, a query language, but it is a powerful query language, and we will see what its powers are. So why I got interested in this technology? There are many reasons, but I will just mention the main reasons because of which I got interested in this technology. So the first thing is that I've noticed that you can make queries with GraphQL, and you can get result in single request. The same request when you make with REST API, then you have to make more than one request, and that is really resource intensive. So it's, if you make the same request in same if you're getting the same result in the single request, then definitely your performance of your app, or uh, your complete system's performance increases and enhances a lot. So that is something really I liked about GraphQL. Also GraphQL, you must have noticed that in my previous tutorials I have used Firebase as a backend service, but Firebase is a complete backend service, and it is not a query language like GraphQL. And also because it's a complete package, the database and the system we get data from backend, and everything is packed as a one package, and you cannot host it on your own. You can just use it, or you, and whenever you exceed the limits, then you have to start paying for that whatever rate Google has for Firebase backend. But with GraphQL you are flexible. You can use the ready-made backends, or you can set up your own backend. Uh, we will later see how we can set up our own backend in this series of tutorial. So at in we will start with a ready to use backend for ease of understanding. Okay, so what's the third thing? It is really very much supported by the open source community, and if you are getting stuck, you can take help. by members of GraphQL community. So that is really helpful to means whatever technology you are working on, if it's supported by a high number of people of the community, then it's really very helpful. So these are the few things, and there are many more things that I found good with this technology. So we will learn about those things while we are learning about its feature. So let's see. So now we will start with the steps that we need to get started with this technology. So what is the first step? The first step is to create an account with GraphQL. So GraphQL is a ready to use backend made by Facebook, and you can just sign up with GraphQL and you can get started. So you just have to follow this link to sign up with GraphQL, and I am already signed up, so I think it should take me to the console. After signing it, you will get a go to console option and it will take you to the console. So now I am in console. So remember, you need to sign up and you need to you should be able to get into the console before starting this tutorial, because we will use CLI commands, and CLI commands work only if you are logged in the browser. So you need to sign up first. So next thing you need to do is that you need to install GraphQL CLI. So I have already installed GraphQL CLI, so I won't follow this step, but you need to install this GraphQL CLI. Next thing, you need to initialize a React Native project. So I have already initialized a blank. I've already initialized a project, so it's a blank project you can see of React Native. So next let's move to the next step. So next step is that we need to initialize a GraphQL project using the CLI. So I will start from here and let's initialize a GraphQL project. So I am inside my React Native project directory. So I will initialize my GraphQL project here itself. So you can see the syntax that when you initialize the GraphQL project, it's GraphQL init, and there is a name option, and you need to give the project name. It's a good convention to give the same name as your React Native project, but you can give any other name as you prefer. So when you initialize the project, it asks for authorization. So I will authorize the CLI, and now it's authorized. So now if I go to the console, then it should show my project here. Here is my project, React GraphQL API. So I need to select this project so that I can check everything related to this project here. So let's go to schema, and we can see in the schema there are already two schema, user schema and file schema. So these schemas will be already there when you will initialize the project. There is nothing in data. The both schemas are blank with no data, and for this project we just need to consider these two menu options, schema and data. So let's go back to our tutorial. Okay, so what's the fifth step? So we already have user schema. We will modify the user schema. We will add these two fields to our schema. So when you will initialize the GraphQL project, you will get a project.graphql file here, and in the file you will see that the schema that is there in the backend is also uh, in this file. So we will add two of the new fields. So we have added first name and last name, and both the fields are of string type. And you must have noticed that with some fields there is a exclamation mark. So this exclamation mark states that these fields with exclamation mark are non-nullable. So if you want to make a field non-nullable, then you can just give exclamation mark at the end of the field. Okay, so we have added two fields. Now after adding two fields, or whatever modification you make to the local project.graphql file, you need to push the uh, changes to the backend server. Also, when you will initialize the project, you will see that you will get two APIs. We will use these two API later, and for now we will just push the changes that we have make. So this command for that is GraphQL push. This is very similar to the git push that we have with git. Okay, so it's done. You can see that it says your schema was successfully updated. Now if we will go to our backend and we will refresh the schema, then we will see the changes that we made locally. So the changes that we made locally has been updated in the backend. So let's see what's the next step we need to follow. Next we will install the React Apollo GraphQL client. So we need a GraphQL client so that we can use it in our React Native project, React Native app, because GraphQL is just a query language, and there should be a client that implements that query language. So React Apollo is that client that implements GraphQL query language. So let's go to command line and npm install react apoll apollo save. So this will install React Apollo client. Okay, our Apollo client is installed, and there are it will give you some unmet dependency messages, but I don't think it should cause any issue. Okay, so let's see what's the next step. The step 8 is that we need to create a app.js. So let's go and create the structure that we need for this app. So I will first create a app directory. In the app directory I will create a app.js file, app.js. I will also create a components directory in the app directory, and let's see next what we need to do. So we need to use this code in our app.js file. So I will just paste it, copy and paste it, and I need to change this URI, because this URI should be the URI of the current project that we have created. So I will copy this and I will paste it here. Okay, so I have replaced the URI with my current URI, current project's URI. Okay, so let's see what's the next step. So you can also check the endpoints, the URI that is needed here, using this command GraphQL endpoint. You will see if I fire this command, GraphQL endpoints, then I will get three endpoints: simple API, relay API, and file API. And this is the API endpoint that we need, and I have already added this API and API endpoint in our project. So there are, so when you will initialize the project, that time also you will get this endpoint API, and if you somehow miss that API, then you can again get it by firing this command GraphQL endpoints. Okay, let's see what's the next step. So the next step is that we will create a create user component in our components directory. So I will just copy this code. So I will create a create user.js file, and I will paste the code here. Okay, so now let's understand what's happening in the code. Okay, this code is simply taking two inputs, first name and last name, and when we press the button create user, it is uh, it is calling this function create user, and this create user function basically calls a prop function create user mutation. So what is a mutation? So mutation in GraphQL is basically a way to write data to the backend. It's as simple as that. It's a way to write your data in the backend. So here we are using, we have written a mutation. You can see the syntax of this mutation. You will initially find it a bit confusing to understand, but when you have a look of this syntax day after day, you will get used to it. Okay, the syntax is very much similar to two nested functions. Okay, you can see there is a outer function and there is a inner function. This outer function name is called This is called a property type, sorry, this is called operation name. This outer function is called operation name, and this inner function has a specific syntax. Uh, it it has a prefix create, and then there is the schema name. So if you want to the write data to user schema, then the syntax will be create user. If you write data to the file schema, then your syntax will be create file. And you can give any any name of your choice to the this mutation. You can see this outer function names follows the keyword mutation. This keyword mutation will be there for all mutations. So this is basically the syntax of a mutation. So we have written a mutation, and we have assigned this mutation to create user mutation constant, and this constant we are passing to GraphQL container. So this is a GraphQL container, and we are passing this mutation here, and we are also passing the create user component, this complete component, to this. So this container is basically linking this mutation with this create user component. This is very much similar to the Redux combine that we do. Okay, that also makes a link, and this is also making a link. And once this linking is done, then this create user mutation is available as a prop, and you can use this prop to pass the variables, and these variables will be used by mutation to the value of those variables will be used by mutation to write data to the backend. So here is how these variables are being used that you are passing. So that's what mutation is, and it is very simple. Just you have to learn the syntax, and you have to understand the syntax, how we have to write it. There are many aspects of this syntax we will cover in next tutorials, but for now you can just see how we can write simple data in the GraphQL backend using this mutation. Okay, so rest of the things are very simple, like we have in a React Native project. Okay, it's a simple component, there's constructor, and there is a render method. So everything is similar and simple. So next, let's go back and see what's our next step. So our next step is another component, list user. So I will go ahead and copy code of this component, and I will create another component here, list user .js, and I will paste my code here. Okay, so let's see what we need to look at in this component. So in this component we are using a query. A query is very similar to mutation, but query has a different work. Query is basically used to fetch data and provide you with the data that you made query of. So the syntactical difference is that the query has keyword query before it, just like mutation has keyword mutation. And then there is this name, and following this is the query name. So query also has a specific convention. If you are trying to fetch all the data from user schema, then the query name will be all users. If you are trying to fetch all data from file uh, schema, then the name will be all files. So this is what convention follows, and rest of the thing you will find very similar, the way we are uh, adding it to the GraphQL container, and again how we are using this all all users query as a prop, you can see here. So we are using it as a prop. So when we use it as a prop, and when this component gets mounted, that time there are three things that will be that will get returned. So the three cases that will be there is that when the data is loading, because it's a async function, so there will be a loading phase. So while the loading phase is going on, it will return a loading property as true, and in case there is any error, then this error property will be returned. And if loading is done and there is no error, then all users will be returned. So we need to check for these three cases, and accordingly we need to perform the operation. So when there is loading, we will render a activity indicator. When there is no error, when there is error, then we will just render the error message to the user. And when everything is done and there is no error, then we will simply render the list that we are trying to fetch. Okay, so that's how it is working. So we have created two components, create user and list user. So let's go ahead and see what's our next step. Okay, so we are almost done with the steps we needed. Now we can go ahead and we can try to run our app. So we need to make one more small change, that is the index iOS.js I need to change. I have to paste this code in index iOS.js. And it should now work. So I will go ahead and refresh my app. Unable to resolve src. Okay, here we should have app. Can't find variable list page. Okay. Here we should have create user. Okay, it's giving a bit this is not exactly aligned the way that I wanted. Let's make small change. Okay, same thing. Okay, now it looks good. So let's go ahead and add some first name and last name of some people and see how it works. So first I will go ahead and add my own name. And let's create. Okay, so one name has been added, and next we need to add one more name. Okay, we added one more name. Okay, we have added three names, and now we will go ahead and make small change in our code. We will use we will change line number 3 and line number 10 to use list user component. Let's refresh the app. So you can see the three names that I just added. I can see here Devavi, Barbara Jones, and John Smith. So the data got written in the backend by the mutation, and when I used list user component, then it was the same data was fetched by the query. So the query and mutation we understood and we implemented, and it is working as per our requirement. And you can go ahead and also check the same data in the console. You can go to data and you can click on users. So in the user schema you can see that there are three data: John Smith, Barbara Jones, and Devavi that was created. And so our code is working as per our requirement, and we successfully learned the how GraphQL uses mutation and how GraphQL uses query. So guys, I hope you would have enjoyed this getting started tutorial, and you must be finding it yourself equipped with GraphQL. And in next tutorials we will understand some more things about GraphQL, and gradually we will master this GraphQL. And I think you will find it very useful, because the power of GraphQL gives you lots of flexibility, and there are many good things that you will find, and you will find it easy. The more you will learn, you will find it easy to create apps with GraphQL. So thank you so much for watching this tutorial, and if you want to stay tuned, just make sure you subscribe to the newsletter, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you like this tutorial, give it a thumbs up, and we'll keep posting such informative tutorials. Thank you guys so much.